Hi, this is Paula Casson from SnapComms. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're here to have a half-hour best practice workshop for anyone who's interested, and today's topic is alerts. We're going to get into SnapComms pop-up alerts in a bit more detail and share with you some tips. So just to get started, first off, my name is Paula Casson, and I work in the customer success area for SnapComms, and I work out of California. And we have Kim Cooper and Philip Nunn out of our headquarters in New Zealand with us today too.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Great, and Phil's going to look after chat, and they're going to chime in too from time to time just to add more clarity. Yeah, and SnapComms, just so you know, we're an enterprise software company. I think we're up to about 1.4 million users now, aren't we, Kim? And customers all around the world, and we're very focused on business customers looking to reach their employees in great ways. So that's just a little bit about who we are.
Correct, Paula. We have got up to 1.4 million users now.
1.4, yeah. We chatted about that a couple of days ago, and
we did.
That's been confirmed then. Good, fantastic. Growth is good. So I wanted to ask you who's here today, and I have a little poll question for you, really simple. Since we're in a webinar scenario, we're not going to go around the table or anything, but let me just ask you a quick question. Are you using alerts now? So let me just launch this for one moment. Wanted to find out if you already are familiar with alerts or not, just so I know what kind of detail I might want to go through so that you have the right kind of context. Okay, I see a few results coming in here, and I'll close that off. We only have half an hour, so we're not going to dally. And so half of you do use alerts, and that's great. We have some people here who use other tools, not alerts, and I see a few new people who don't know that much about alerts, so that's great. Thanks for that. That's what I needed to know. And let me move along here. What we really want is to give you some depth on what's possible with this tool and give you something practical as well that you can really use and apply when you get back to your office, or even if you're just trialing, testing our software, you can go in there and have a play and do something new that you might not have found. So you'll see there's a question area, and please use that anytime. Throw anything that doesn't make sense or any additional questions you have, please put them in there, and we'll hopefully we can answer them as we go rather than save them for the end. Makes it more interesting to have a couple voices here. So that's a little bit of setup, and now let's get into the content, what we're talking about today. So in terms of our alert tool, so we have our pop-up alerts that lets you get a visual message out onto the devices of your audience, whoever you have on your distribution list essentially. What we're going to talk about today is, first off, the message itself, how to optimize that, what are some best practices around the information you put in the message, and then the visuals, the template that you use. Secondly, we're going to spend probably half the time on the fabulous delivery methods that we have for you. You pretty much can control exactly how that shows up on screen, how long it's available. You know, we have fantastic features for you there. So we'll go into all of that and talk about some of the strategies behind that. And then at the end, we're going to just touch a little bit on some other important pieces as well. You know, checking in with measuring what's working, what's getting you the best response, checking with your audience, and then setting up your defaults so that you have consistency to help message absorption. Okay? So let's get into the first piece, the message itself. You know, really, for this, you want to make the information that you're sending out easy to absorb. And let's talk about the message body. What do you have in the actual pop-up alert that you're sending out? And you know, really, can you make it easy to absorb? Is the information you're sending, is it helpful? Is it really important? Do you really need to send that? You want to just have a sanity check on that. A lot of people, you'll find with alerts sometimes when a company adopts them and people start seeing them, you'll get a lot of demand. You'll get people saying, oh my gosh, I want to use that. I'm the VP of this, and I want to send this to my team, and you want to do a sanity check too on whether alerts, it's important enough to go into an alert, which is a potential interruption for your audience. And clear call to action, that one, I just, when you have set up your message, you want to look, is it easy to figure out what in the heck you want the person receiving this message, what do you want them to do? Make it really clear. This one, yeah, this one's okay. This is a demo, an example screenshot I have on the screen. It's not too bad. We can see the link. We can see in red what's important. We can see what it's about. And the last point on here, I wrote down cold, warm, or hot, and I was trying to find a good way to talk about the emotion. I think it is important to look at your message in terms of how does it come across. Does it come across as really harsh? Does it come across as warm and inviting? Does it match your culture? Is it going to inspire people, or is it going to turn them off? I think that's something really important to look at in your message too. So now we'll spend another few minutes on this. So here's a generic message, right? We can see this is about an outage. If you look at this message on the left, all the details are there. I'm sure hopefully you're looking at that and you can read a bit of that. But listen, there's ways, just simple ways to make this easier to absorb. I think when you look at your message, try to figure out how many seconds is it going to take for them to figure out what it's about. And if you look at the one on the right, we've got the date, we've got the name of the software that's down, and we've got some bits in red. We've got a little list here, and it's pretty clear what we want them to do. So the one on the right, just a little bit of formatting, a little bit of organization in the body of your message, and you're going to give them something that's a lot easier to manage, to process. Now, call to action, that's another one too. Sometimes you're sending a message and you just want them to absorb this information. You're keeping them up to date, right? Other times you want them to click through. You want them to take some sort of action. I mean, even maybe you want them to read this message and then close it out. What do you need them to do? Have a think about that and just make sure you build your message around the core of what you need your audience to do. And that last one was a little, you could sort of tell what was happening, but here's another example. This one I think is extremely clear. It's a simpler message, of course. The kind of message where, stay away from this area, stay away from building F. This one I probably changed the template, having alert up there, gives you 3 places to look. There's more we could do to make this even better, but hopefully you're getting the idea about what I mean in terms of making things clear. And also, visuals in the body. With a SnapComms editor, it's up to you what you put in your message. We give you, a great editor, and you'll see here on the left, no smoking. That visual certainly helps that absorption. And on the right, this is a message that's pretty simple. We're trying to get people to click through to read a new procedure. But imagine if you didn't have that lady there. I know it's a simple image, but she's sitting there smiling. She's looking a bit warm and friendly. And if you had this message, if you sent this out without that image, it would have a very different impact. This is what I'm talking about when I'm saying cold, warm, hot. Have a think about that and see what you can do to make your messages more appealing to the people you're sending them to. Right, so the editor, I just wanted to show you this. Here's a screenshot of the administrator portal. And in here you can look at put in your text. You can, this is the pop-up here that says product launch. This little screenshot, I should say, that's for your little corner prompt. If you're sitting through a little corner read now, read later, you can customize that. And then preview. You can preview any message that you've written. Here's an example of a reminder type of an alert. So that's something else to do to make sure the content of your message is really good and going to look the way you want it to when it shows up. Okay. Now, so the body of the message, that's one thing, and let's talk a little bit about the visual template that you use. So hopefully you know that really we can take any design, any look and feel, and put that into SnapComms. You can see the top right image has a photo background, and we've got one in the middle here that has some different areas and hyperlinks, permanent hyperlinks in there. So any look and feel is possible, and that can help accelerate people's understanding of the message as well. And we have a lot of customers that will use message template families, if you will, that have a whole series of messages. I'm thinking of some cable companies we have where they do have different divisions using it. So each division has their logo, and they just use that template for their messages. And on screen are some simple messages too. We have a lot of hospitals using it for code alerts, and those are the color's the biggest signal there. And then outages, red for an outage, green for all clear, blue for an informational message. That kind of thing is possible too. So think about that when you set up your alerts. And this page, we'll send you this PowerPoint afterwards. There's a link here if you want to know more about templates and how to build them and things like that. You're welcome to go look. And we can make templates responsive. Most companies are doing that now as they're delivering Snap Comms messages out to computers, but also tablets and phones. So we don't have customers. I figured I'd mention this because it usually comes up as a question. We don't have customers uploading templates because there's a lot of work we do behind the scenes to map them out, and so they will scale and fit whatever you put in that message, whether it's full screen or a small pop-up. And we optimize them for different device types. So we take your graphics and upload them into your system. All right, so that's all about the message itself, and now let's talk a little bit about the delivery. And so just, you're sending out these messages in a bottle, and we've talked about the kind of bottle and the color of the paper and the message, but you can control the tides with our software. You can control how many bottles show up on the shore, and pretty much control exactly where that bottle goes and how it reaches the person that you need to find it. And so when you're thinking about how you want this message to appear to your audience, what time of day makes sense for them to receive this message? If it's an outage message like this, or a service alert that's really important to a particular team, you're going to send that out immediately. But there's other messages that might make sense to send first thing in the morning when people first arrive to work. Also, how important is it that they see it immediately, or is it okay if they see it over the next 2-3 days? Is this something you want people to understand and absorb over the next week or over the next hour, right? All of that, you know that better than we do. It really varies for each kind of message that you send. But here's what you can do. So that here's an example of an emergency alert where we can send something that cuts through on every computer, whether someone's active or not, goes full screen, let's evacuate the building, you can get that out. So there's such a variety of how these things display. Let's get into it. So for the display settings, if you're in the administrator portal, and I'm going to go there now, but it's the advanced tab where most of this lives. And I think the simplest way to go through it is simply to follow the way we organize it in there: standard, urgent, and emergency. So let me come over to my the administrator portal, and what I want to do is come in here to an alert message. So here's an alert message, and I'm going to click over to the advanced tab. This is where we want to have a look. Now, when we've set up our message, and now we've come over, the advanced tab gives us all the delivery settings, and you'll see at the very top we have a standard setting, we have an urgent setting, and an emergency setting. And I'm going to start with emergency. Emergency, it's the simplest, right? Emergency, that's going to go out whoever you've targeted, whether it's a list of users or a list of devices. That message will show up full screen, and it'll cut through anything that if they're in screensaver mode or locked out, or if they're in full screen mode in a presentation or some other application, it's going to cut through. And Phil, I'm right saying that pretty much if it's in sleep mode, we don't cut through, but if they're locked out or in screensaver mode, it's going to show. Is that right?
Correct. Provided they've been logged in before.
Right, that makes sense. They have to have been logged in before, so we know who they are. Good, so that's emergency. And urgent is the next level down. So urgent, we're not going to force it to go full screen. And we give you some other options. You can set something to be any size you like. But with urgent, it's still going to cut through on screensavers. And let me just confirm here. Yeah, it's very similar to emergency. You'll see in these notes here we talk about snooze a little bit. So snooze is a feature you can give your users if they want to turn off Snap comms for a period of time. Think an executive or someone who's in a major presentation for half the day and they really don't want any internal messages showing up. With urgent, we're not going to disturb those people who have deliberately turned off Snap comms temporarily. With emergency, we are. So that's why emergency is great for evacuations or really mission critical stuff where we want everyone who's in the building to know about this, not just internal people, right? And you'll see here for urgent, this is one of my favorite settings, topmost. This is going to make sure that people, it shows up on their screen and they have to go and manually close it in order to remove it. So let me just come over here. What I want to do is I'm going to pull up my SnapComms message history. I have a few example messages that are published. So this is my audience view. This is where I can see the messages that have been sent to me. And what I want to do is show you an example of something that has been sent urgent mode. So with urgent, this would have come through straight onto the top of my screen. You can see we have a few details here. And if I click out, if I click to another page, it doesn't go behind it, right? That's what topmost does. It makes sure it stays on top. So in order for me to get back to work, I do have to interact with this message. There's no way that I was, this popped up on my screen and I was so busy I clicked out and I didn't even read the headline. There's no way for that to happen. I do have to interact with it and close it. Right. So, Phil, Kim, do you guys have anything to add when it comes to how you see urgent used? No? Good? Okay, so...
Sorry, Paula, just couldn't get myself off mute quickly enough. No, I was just going to say that I think the snooze feature in particular is probably something that's underutilized, and that is something that we should perhaps expand a little more on in another session. It's a really useful feature that isn't turned on by default, and so I think that's something that people can make a lot of use of, particularly for those executives that, as you say, are in a half-day meeting, for example, and don't require those alerts to be displayed to them. But at the same time, the flexibility between standard alerts, urgent, and emergency allow you to ensure that you get across what you need to with regard to the type of message that you're sending. So I think
Very good. Yep.
I think you've got that granularity to be able to to ensure that the right message reaches the right person at the right time. Yeah,
absolutely. I agree. I mean, that's why we built Snooze years ago, isn't it? Because there were people in situations where they really wanted to make sure they weren't interrupted or that nothing confidential showed on screen. And it gives them that power to ensure.
I think, exactly, and I think the important point here is that you can as an administrator of the system, you can decide who has the ability to snooze the product and for how long they have that ability to snooze the product for. So it's not kind of a turned off permanently, because that clearly goes against the SnapComms value proposition. But
then you lose all the power of it. So yes, it's person by person. Might be a few people that are allowed to do that, or you just enable it for a conference or for 2 days or however long they need it, and then
So it's pretty flexible in terms of how you use it, but that's probably worthy of a separate discussion, I guess.
I think yes. Okay, so emergency is clear, urgent. That this cuts through to full screen, stays on until they close it, and I would say for urgent, a lot of the use cases we see outage notifications where it's really important that people know there's a problem with some sort of system or software, and weather as well, where we got a huge storm coming, you can leave work early or something like that, or out here it would probably be earthquakes, but I see it more in the Midwest and the East Coast in the U.S. for storm warnings. And now, let's see, this I'm going to pop through this. I already described this. This will be a reference for you later. And let's look at standard alerts. So a standard alert, now this is where you get all the so much control over how interruptive you want to be. So standard alerts are the ones that let you send through a little corner pop-up alert. And what I'll do is I'll just send one to myself right now. I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to publish this product launch message, which I've set up with a corner prompt so you can see what this looks like on my screen. And I'll hit publish, and that should take a minute or so to come through. So we'll just wait for that to show up. There we go. Successful. But let's go to the Advanced tab and have a look at this while we're waiting for that message to show up. So instead of having something go direct on screen with all the information, the instructions, the call to action, you can do that with a normal standard notification, but a standard alert. I don't want to confuse you with my terminology here. But notification, that's what we call it when there is a two-step process. We're going to send through a little corner prompt, a notification that has your message header, and it says read now, read later. And right down here, these are all the controls for that. How long do you want that corner prompt to be on screen? And you can see my settings, and we'll see this come through in a moment. 30 seconds is how long we're going to show that read now, read later. And if they don't click on it, if they're too busy, it's going to disappear after 30 seconds. Maybe they just got up to get a cup of coffee and they're actually not in front of their screen. Well, these settings right here tell me we'll have it on screen 30 seconds. If they do nothing, we're going to try again in 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, we'll try again. And here's my pop-up. Do you see? This is what we're describing. This is what I'm describing. So this corner prompt is set for 30 seconds. If I do nothing, it'll disappear after 30 seconds. But I can read now to get to the main message if I have time, if it's appropriate, if I'm willing right now. But if I'm in the middle of something, if I'm too busy, I can hit read later, and that will send it back in 5 minutes. Now, I'm going to say read now, so you can see the main message here. Close that. So here's my main message, and we have a link to click on. This probably looks familiar. I had a screenshot of it in before. So there's your two-step process. We're going to invite them to read our message if it's a good time. If it's not a good time, we're going to try again later. That's really the heart of the standard alert when you use that invitation in the corner, the notification. Now there's a couple other settings here too. You'll see frequency. Now we can come back every 5 minutes and pretty much bother you until you open it. I'm not a fan of unlimited though. Unlimited means we're just going to come back until this message expires. But I would suggest you'll see it every once in a while. You'll see somebody. It may be a IT person and it's a user where there's really nobody in front of that computer very often, or it could be someone who just refuses to click, and they're never going to click through. They don't want to read it. So you can decide, look, this message is pretty important. Let's try 8 times. If they haven't clicked through after 8 times, if they've hit read later or ignored it, they're probably not going to click. So we're going to stop putting that up on the screen. So this is where a lot of the fine-tuning comes in terms of how important is it that I reach 100% of my audience, 95%, 97%. How important is it that I see everyone interacting with this message, or is 90% okay? And we're still talking about insanely great numbers. If you compare it to email or other methods of getting information out to your audience, our numbers are amazingly high, right? You're going to reach a much higher proportion of your people than other methods. So this lets you fine-tune all that. You also have a notification sound here too. If you want to have a little notification audio sound play when that pops up, you can. Just be aware that if there's an open plan office and you've sent this to everyone in the office, over the course of a minute or two, you're going to get a lot of sound coming out of all those machines. So this is something to use carefully, I would say. Phil, Kim, what do you think in terms of sound, the best times to use sound?
So, Paul and Phil here. So one of the things that we do see sound being used for is people that have certain accessibility requirements within the system. So ensuring that are able to be aware that an alert has arrived and so on, and it also gets used in conjunction with screen readers and so on. So I think that's a good example of when we would use that.
Okay, great. And then keep notifying when read. That'll keep a message coming back even if someone's interacted with it. And that can be good for a shared computer situation or a retail situation where you might have different shifts coming in. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a bit of a sense here. And what I want to do, though, is move on because I know it's taking me, there's a lot more I want to get through. And we only have a few minutes left. All right, so a lot of this is written out in the slides. And before we move on, though, I want to ask you, what do you use? For those of you who already use alerts, let me know have you used all of these? I've got a question here for you where you can select as many of the answers as you like, okay? And also, if you're not using SnapComms, which one do you think is the most appropriate? Which one do you think is the most interesting for you? I mean, we're not going to call you on this. I'm just interested to know which ones resonate. Okay. Oh, we got very even numbers. Seeing some results come through. I think everyone is there. Okay, let me close that and share the results with you. Okay, so direct on screen, that's interesting. A lot of people are using that. I would say that's probably my favorite. There's so many types of messages where 2 steps, it's simple enough. Just get it on screen, get it in front of them, easy to absorb. But that's great. I see some people using emergency as well. It's fantastic. Okay, and I'm happy that all categories are used. We do build these things hoping that it's all useful, and it looks like it is. Fantastic. Okay, moving on. Here's something too, and a lot of you. Let's see. Did I skip a page? I did. Somehow I popped 2 pages up. So before we move on, let's talk about how long is your message going to be valid. We've talked about how it displays on screen, but you can set the lifespan for your message. You can set availability. You can see here in this screenshot, maybe you have a message that's really time sensitive. Hey, we've got so-and-so on our campus. We've got a big VP or, the president's here or something like that. Send that out for the next hour. And it's really only valid for a tiny, short lifespan. Or maybe you have something that you want them to be able to go back and find in their message history and reference later. All of that is available here. You decide when that message goes out and when that message essentially expires. All right, so that's one thing to look at. And then here, disable. You can go to your list of messages too and just turn off any message. This happens a lot for outage notifications. The IT guys will send out an outage notification and they'll set it for a day. They don't know how long the outage is going to last. Turns out it's an hour and a half. Everything's back up to normal now. They can send out their all clear message, and they can just come in here and hit the disable button to stop that outage notification from showing up on anyone else's computer. And you can see where this is important. If you have people that have been away from the office and they come back 4 p.m. and you don't want them getting a lot of obsolete notices. Of course you don't. That's going to create more confusion. Or people that have gone on leave, they come back, 2 weeks later, you don't want them to have a lot of information there that is no longer relevant. You don't want them to have to go through heaps of stuff. So disable combined with your expiry dates, your publish dates, that's what will make sure the content's available and not creating any noise either. The last piece of we're back to the Advanced tab, and I like to mention this little tick box, remove when read. This is a nice little box that will override, if somebody's read that message, they won't, it's great for reminder type messages where you're just reminding someone to do something's happening this Friday. They really don't need to go back and look at that again. Just hit remove when read. It's not going to be filling up their message history window. They can't access it again, and they don't need to. So that box is there as well. Okay, so reports. Now we're moving on. We've talked about the content. We've talked about delivery a bit. Now, how do you know what the right delivery is? How do you know what settings really are going to work for your message? And frankly, you send some out. You send some out to yourself, to your team, to your audience, and you have a rich store of information here. We've got our click-through reports, our content display, our download reports. So you can track every little step along the way and find out what's really working for your audience. Did you get the result that you wanted in terms of reaching people? Did you send through a little pop-up alert, and are people ignoring it? Or, is your average click-through coming at 5 pop-ups? That would be bad. And what I'll do, I'm just going to pop over here again and show you that. So in terms of the content reports, you go into your folders. There's a little, this is the new view, by the way. This is the view that we're rolling out to everybody, our new interface that's a lot cleaner. But if you use our software now, you'll recognize these reports. So here you can come in and click into the report that you want and find the specific message and go and look down to the granular level as to who's clicked or who's completed, who's interacted with that. So that will give you a lot of fantastic data, so you can see over time, what time of day seems to work best, and you can even go in and have a look at look, it's the same people who never read my messages. You can find that out if you look at some of our other reports. Now, apologies for this. My report here has very little data because I've just been sending messages to myself, but you can see the kind of information that we give you, and down here at the bottom you can customize the details, pull up whatever columns and data you want and export it, do whatever you need to with the reports in here. Okay, so the other thing too, just go ask your audience as well. I have my preferences in terms of visual messaging, how I like these messages to show up, but frankly, it's so helpful to go out and ask your audience, the people you're trying to reach. Make sure you understand what they like, what they don't. There could be some context or some time of day that really doesn't work for them. Go ask them, and it can be as simple as throwing up a question in your, on Confluence in a forum, if you use that kind of a tool, or do a formal survey, grab a few people, do a focus group. And I love the idea too of having a champion. If you can set up a sort of program where you have someone in each department that is there to give you feedback, show them how great SnapComms is, the alerts, what you're using, explain why you're using them and how it's helping them, and have them send you feedback from their teams. You can do that too, just work sort of with a longer term relationship. But those two things, definitely do that so you know what really is going to work for your company and your message and your audience. And then we're down to the end here. Consistency. Did you know, hopefully you know this, but you may not, under management there's a section, a default section, that's what's in orange here on the left. You can set the defaults. So when anybody creates a new message, the preferred settings, if you know that, if you see here 15 seconds, yep, 15 seconds works for us, and we'll send a message back every 45 minutes. This is for the employee, the corporate announcements that come through once a week. If you know those settings work, then preset them. You can go in and choose the folder where your messages live and have specific settings for that folder. This will give you consistency. It really is great if you have all the corporate messages showing up top middle of the screen, pop up, and then maybe center screen is where the IC outage messages go. You've got the visual template, and you've got the consistency in terms of how they show up. That's going to help too with your audience. Okay. All right. Any questions? I've gone through the material that I prepared, just hopefully give you some takeaways and things to think about. And Phil, have you seen any questions come through?
Not as yet. So I guess that shows that I think you covered the subject pretty well. My only other comment really, Paula, was just around the reporting side and the versioning. So when you look at the various alerts, then it might be worth just touching on that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great one. So every time you can publish a message more than once, In fact, I have an example of that, which I'll pull up here too. Let's see. This was an example that I created earlier. So, quarterly updates. You can set up a message here. Comes out once a quarter. Reminds people 7 days before the end of the quarter to take some action. You can just have that go out every quarter, and you would have different versions. Every 3 months, you have a new published date. And what Phil's mentioning is every time you publish something, you can come in. We do capture separate results for that. You can look at results across all publishes or go down to a specific one instance of a message and look at results from just that message. Yeah. And actually, you've reminded me too, I have had a lot of screens up here, but let me go into this reminder message because I didn't touch on that when we talked about your publish dates. That's another pretty powerful feature when it comes to delivering your message. If you have any sort of reminder categories of messages, we do have repeat scheduling where you set this message up once. It's the same message. You can see here we have it going out the 24th day of every 3 months, so once a quarter. And it's basically going to go out for a day, 23 hours. Yeah, so there's a lot of flexibility there too in terms of getting your messages out and not having to spend a lot of time getting out what you need to. Okay.
So Paula, there's just a couple of questions here from Lisa, and one of them, the first one was, can you view as a type of audience or distribution list to see what is in their message history? So I think what we're saying to that is, can we see what's published at any time?
To one particular person.
Mm-hmm. Correct. So I think the content calendar would give you those options. I would need to check if it goes down to individual users, but the content calendar would be where you would look for that. So Lisa, what I'll do, I'll just take a look at that after this call finishes and come back to you separately. But I think the content calendar would give you what you require. If that isn't what you're looking for, then just let me know. Your second question was around, you said, what do you mean by the need to be logged in before? And I guess that was referring to whether a alert would display over a locked screen. So what I mean by that is that we target by a user's login credentials. So if the machine hasn't had anyone logged into it, then clearly the machine doesn't know, or rather our system doesn't know who to target it to. So if you've logged into a machine and then let's say you've walked away and your screen's locked, then we're aware that you're a user on that machine, if you like. So we're able to target that individual and display the message that's been targeted to it. But if it's just a machine that no one has been logged into, then there's clearly no one to target to in that scenario.
Yep, because isn't that true? If you completely logged off, that sort of shuts down your session, and SnapComms runs, that launches automatically once a user logs in, launches in the operating system. So, yeah, that's a good point. And here, I wanted to show you, we have this user publishing schedule, and this is under the calendar, the content calendar, and you can come in here and you can have a look. You can see there's a search field, so you just search for whichever user or machine that you're looking for. And this, what we're looking at here, is a visual display of the messages that are currently live on my computer, right? So yeah, you can look at that. And we have different ways to, different views as well here. You can click, and here's a list view showing, so you can see which messages are still live and what's showing up for them or what they have going on. That's useful.
Yeah, and
I love that, especially if you have a huge audience. Let's just have a sanity check. What's out there on sales. If you have several administrators, it's great to be able to have this view of everything that's out there.
Yeah. There's just a follow-up question from Lisa as well, saying, will it then show when they've logged in and will they get a backlog? So the answer to that is yes, provided that message is still valid. So again, we're all about showing messages that are valid at that time, and what I mean by that is it hasn't expired or been disabled. So if, for example, it was an emergency and that emergency was then ended for whatever reason, then that message was disabled, then that will not display for someone who comes back in and logs into their machine, simply because it's deemed not relevant for them, as they clearly weren't around when that emergency appeared. If messages are sent to a user when they're not logged in, then those messages will appear when that user logs in according to the publishing schedule that's set for that particular message. So in other words, it will try and display, and if it can't, then it will go into its recurrence mode and come back after 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or whatever that recurrence frequency was specified.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I mean, it depends on what groups you have using SnapComms, right? If there's an outage that happens to happen and there's an outage notification, then when they first log in, maybe they get in at noon after having the morning out. We are going to try to reach them, even if it was published in the morning, we'll try to reach them immediately when they're active on the computer. Mm-hmm. But for most companies, they're not sending out heaps during the day. If they're using them at a team level or a division level, they're going to be targeting just those people. We don't really see often a lot of messages stacking up where you end up with heaps of messages visually appearing when you log back in. That's really, really rare, I'd say.
Hey, there's just one other thought, Paula, while we're there, and it just jogged my memory. Again, thinking about wanting to be as user-friendly, I guess, to your users, then for pop-up notifications, you do have the option to specify what times of day they appear and do not appear, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's another, it's just another way of ensuring that the messages that you send are relevant, engaging, and I guess are appropriate to the level of intrusiveness that you wish to have. So you can set those as well.
Yep, that's down here, bottom of this screen. So that's great for those messages that are important but not urgent, where it's okay if they absorb them over time. You could reduce that down, and this is going to be their local time. If you say 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., then it's going to be their time. It'll suppress them, and they'll only visually appear in that time.
Yeah, and kind of the use case here is you may not want non-critical or non-urgent or non-important messages to be displayed, when someone first logs in the morning or last thing at night and so on. So it's just about tailoring that experience of SnapComms to the message that you're trying to send. Absolutely.
Great.
Another question from Lisa, which is, what is silent publish? Do you want to go for that one, Paula?
Caught me on that. I listed it out, and I didn't say, did I? Anyway, I did list it out. Yes, silent publish. So this, we'll come back over here and have a look at that really quickly. Silent publish is available for a standard alert, and what that means is the message that you send is going to be delivered to the machine. It'll be here in the message history window, but we're actually not going to visually display it. We're not going to pop it up. They're going to need to go manually into the message history and click on it. And there's a couple of times when that's useful. Sometimes you'll have, for example, new hires, part of their onboarding. Hey, we've got some resources for you. We put them in SnapComms. You can go and click and get the phone numbers of the key people that you need to read. Like you might have a resource available to make life easier, and they just go into SnapComms to find it. Yeah, and let's see. That's the main scenario I've seen where people we're going to silent publish something. Some sort of resource, people know where to go get it, and it's housed in SnapComms. Phil, what about you? There's a couple other scenarios, but that's the main one that I see most often.
Yeah, updates where you don't necessarily require someone to be reading it again, if that makes sense, but should they come back to read it, then you want to make sure that they're reading the most up-to-date information. So you would update the message, excuse me, send it via silent publish, so if it's something that sits in their message history window, they can come back and read that and make sure it's up to date, but they don't necessarily need to have, they don't necessarily need to be actioned, I should say, in terms of an alert.
True. So say you have a message like this and you find a typo, or you find a link is broken, you didn't catch it beforehand. If everybody's already clicked on it, but you still have it available, you might silent publish. Silent publish would stop any visual pop-ups, though, if some of the audience hasn't seen it. But yeah, that is another scenario. Great, thank you for the questions. Love it. Any more questions? I think that's it. Listen, I hope we've given you a little more insight into SnapComms and what you can do with it. And if you're in the Content Manager, you'll see we put a lot of info here under these little information icons to describe what everything is. You know, we really want to give the message sender full control over how it shows up, and so that's why there's a lot of options in here. But I would say get in there, have a play with it, and thank you very much. Thanks again for reading, and that really brings us to the close. Come to the end. Thank you.
Thanks, Paula. Thank you very much, Paula.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. And also 2 weeks from now, we are going to have a similar half hour diving into the ticker, the newsfeed ticker scroll, and go into all the fantastic things you can do with that and where that really is extremely powerful. So please join us for that.
Thank you, Paula.
Okay. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.